Bethesda jest gorsza niż ci się wydaje. O ku... Ty, oglądamy to? Godzinny materiał Bethesda jest gorsza niż ci się wydaje. Ja już i tak instalowany u Bethesdy na blackliście. Ty dawaj, odpalamy to w fest. Włączę wam napisy po polsku. Ktoś nie będzie czaił. Ale dzisiaj content. Dobra. Nie no, idealnie na dzisiaj. Idealnie.
The last 30 years have seen a momentous rise in the open world 3D role-playing game, and spearheading the genre,
Yes, Jan.
one company. Adopting new technologies,
It features all new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology.
pushing new boundaries, and breaking new ground.
Look at this, man.
And spearheading this company, one boyishly handsome man. It had been a rocky last
Ej, pamiętacie premierę Starfielda? Jezu, ja tak nostalgicznie wspominam Starfielda. To była taka zajebista premiera. Pamiętacie, jak ludzie się tym jarali? Kurwa, jak ludzie trzymali się brzytwy i mówili, nie mów tak o Starfieldzie. Przestań szkołować Starfielda, tych On jest naprawdę zajebisty, tylko ty tego nie rozumiesz. Ciekawe, kto z tych osób w ogóle wrócił do tego Starfielda teraz, albo gra w niego, albo mówi coś o nim, albo nawet o nim wspomina, mówiąc o na przykład dobrych RPGach, o dobrze zbudowanych, otwartych światach, no nie? Bo wydaje mi się, że chyba nikt, bo finalnie ten Starfield się tak po prostu osadził, się tak zamortyzował, że już każdy wie, że jest gównem. Dobra, let's go.
years, but in late 2023, he and the team were in the final
Aktualnie na
works
Steamie 3,5 tysiąca. A ile ma Skyrim? Uwaga, powiedzcie mi, ile ma Skyrim, jak Starfield ma 3,5 tysiąca. To dobre może
of their
być.
next game, the biggest game they'd ever made. More content than their last two games combined,
24
he
ma
said.
Skyrim.
Ready to sweep the Game Awards, as he was now well accustomed, he puts on his leather jacket and emerges once more.
Todd,
But first,
nie zmienia
we
się
go
nigdy.
back. It's the 80s, and a man by the name of Christopher Weaver is a person. He'd been doing a few different things. Assistant directing for PBS and ABC, engineering work for MIT, Panavision and the military, and then some consultancy work on the side. However, sometime around 1985, one of his engineers fancies making an American football game. So Weaver dips his toe into game development and starts work on an engine for it. It's now 1986, and they've just set up shop in a small office in Bethesda, a census-designated place in Maryland. They
Co?
incorporate and then
Bethesda
smash out
to
the game
miasto?
Gridiron by the end of the year.
Czy to
It's one
żart
of the
był?
first sports games to factor in things like momentum and collision detection, and features fairly sophisticated movement mechanics for the time.
Nie
The
wiedziałem.
graphics are also jaw-dropping. And the game does alright. EA even approaches them with a contract
Kurwa,
to work
czy
on a
sobie
football
mikrofon
game
nastawię,
together.
no.
However, this ends in a lawsuit, as it turns out the whole thing was allegedly just a ploy to steal their engine code. Anyway, Weaver and the boys decide to apply the same technology to hockey games, and start pumping those out. It's now the 90s. Expansion. There's now around 20 people at Bethesda, and a
O,
lot
to
more
dużo na
going
tamte
on.
czasy,
So
nie?
they make the move from Bethesda to a bigger office in Rockville. This place is actually a place. Also, turns out no one currently owns the Terminator license, so they jump on it and start pumping out Terminator
Co?
games too.
W latach 90. nikt nie miał licencji do Terminatora? W sensie, że nikt z gier nie posiadał, ją musieli
They
kupić?
also start publishing other developers' games. But first, boats. Nice. Relaxing. Pretty chill.
Oho, reklamka.
What's that? My god. In World of Warships, things are different.
Terminatory, te dwa pierwsze, to filmy, które mają bardzo skomplikowaną sytuację własnościową, a przynajmniej miały w latach 90. 2000. Giga
Free
ciekawe.
new. Sign up now through the link
O,
in the
gitara.
description.
Słyszycie mnie dobrze,
code
nie?
headless to get that. Plus 7 days premium account time. 1.5 million credits. 500 doubloons, and a free ship after completing 15 battles.
No, to super.
It's around 1992 that one of Bethesda's hockey games ends up in the hands of a boy. Now at this point, Todd Howard is
ma
young,
marzenie.
unassuming. He'd been studying finance in college, but
Ej,
Todd Howard is young.
to są jakieś memiczne zdjęcia Todda, stary, z liceum? Czy on już tak wyglądał w liceum?
Unassuming. He'd been studying finance in college, but his real passion was PC gaming. You'd often find him beelining from classes to the school computers to install and play games. And he's a big fan of the chess club. But right now, he really likes this hockey game, and turns out, the developer isn't actually that far away. In fact, they were literally on the way back from his college. So in 1993, he knocks on the door and asks for a job. They tell him no. Finish school.
Wyobraźcie sobie, że istnieje alternatywna linia czasu, w której Bethesda nie zatrudnia Todda Howarda, no nie? To by było giga ciekawe. Myślicie, że wyszłoby to na lepsze czy na gorsze?
Sorry, kiddo. Don't have anything. So Todd gets a job at a different game developer nearby. This job allows him to go to electronics conventions like CES, where developers could show off their new stuff. This is at a point where games are still kind of seen as a joke.
Ty, ale ja pamiętam, jak za dzieciaka oglądałem jakieś takie telewizji albo jakieś przeglądy tego, jak wyglądały wtedy te stare eventy gamingowe. Ja tak zawsze o tym marzyłem, mi się to wydawało tak zajebiste. Jak na przykład okazywało się, że gdzieś w USA był organizowany turniej stary w Quake'a, albo w Magica nawet, w karciankę. To ja myślałem, dlaczego ja się musiałem urodzić w tej Polsce, nie? I potem faktycznie pojechałem na Gamescom raz. A to już dorosły byłem, no nie? Pojechałem na Gamescom, największy event gamingowy. Tam 16 hal chyba różnych, no nie? Wchodzę i mówię, ja pierdolę za gówno. Jakości żarcie, typu hot dogi i hamburgery, które wyglądają jak z dworca, jak mięso miałyby zmielone z psa. Multum spoconych fanów anime. Wszystko i sprzedawanie rzeczy dosłownie jak na odpuście, wszystko z gównianego plastiku, przecenione kilkukrotnie. Oczywiście wszystko zamawiane z Chin. Jeszcze multum spoconych takich obleśnych typów z tymi poduszkami anime. I teraz uwaga, najlepsze. To taki mój chyba największy strach. Ci kolesie stojący z tabliczkami free hugs, darmowe uściski. Jezu, jak ja to widzę, to aż mnie wzdryga, że możesz podejść do takiej randomowej osoby i ją przytulić. Jezu, oni zazwyczaj są jeszcze tak obleśni. Czy jest ktoś, kogo to tak samo przeraża jak mnie? Jak ja to widzę, co wy robicie ze swoim życiem? Ale to jest jeden z tych takich chyba momentów w ich życiu, gdy faktycznie wchodzą w jakiś cielesny kontakt z inną osobą, nie? To się z tego bierze. Czy były te hostessy w skórzanych mini-topach? To potem na afterze, bo wiesz, ale to nie mówimy, to już nie Gamescom.
And the gaming section is literally tossed at the back.
Kto chce przytulać obcych ludzi? Ja nie wiem, też nie czaję, nie?
You had to walk past hordes of porn vendors to even
Oni
get
cały rok czekają i się nie myją na tę okazję. No.
But anyway, Todd would use these conventions to track down Bethesda's stores
Aha.
and continue confessing his love. After around a year and a half of this, in 1994, they finally have an opening, and Todd Howard is in. Now at this point, Bethesda has released a good few hockey and Terminator games, and things were getting a bit stale. So they'd decided to branch out, and right around the time Todd had joined, they're putting the finishing touches on something completely different.
Elder Scrolls.
Headed by a man named Julian Jensen, and with a team of around 10 people, the Elder Scrolls Arena had now been in
10
development.
osób. 10 osób, 3 lata na stworzenie czegoś zupełnie nowego, nie mając tak ogromnej ilości schematów, blueprintów i gotowych silników. Tyle wystarczyło kiedyś, żeby zrobić ponadczasową grę. Co jest nie tak w dzisiejszych czasach? Znaczy, no, wiem w sumie, co może mieć wpływ na to, na przykład ogromna ilość animacji, która jest potrzebna w dzisiejszych grach, ale czy nie da się tego jakoś optymalizować serio? Czy nie ma faktycznie dobrych gier, które wcale nie mają dużej ilości animacji? No są.
It had started out as a simple, linear gladiator combat game.
To jest na splashach 2D i MIDI dźwiękach. Okej? No ale dźwięk najczęściej outsourcujesz albo masz kogoś typowo, kto robi ci dźwięk w firmie. Tak jakby dźwięk nie jest taką konsekwentną częścią robienia gry, gdzie musisz non-stop współpracować z zespołem, nie? Tak jakby zupełnie inaczej się go robi.
Ambitions quickly ballooned. They added side quests, fantasy elements, and some exploration around the cities. And after some playtesting, you know what? Fuck the arenas. Let's open this whole thing up. And before long, they're building a fully fledged open-world role-playing game with side quests, explorable cities, and procedural generation. It's ambitious. They'd had to create their own proprietary engine specifically for it, and other developers are actually laughing at its scope. But in late 1993, it's nearing release. And there's a problem. They'd completely switched genres, but the original game's marketing materials had already been printed, resulting in a front cover
O!
and half the
No kur...
game's marketing materials had already been printed, resulting in a front cover
I to były dobre, ale mi się to kojarzy z takim starym Dungeons and Dragons, ze starymi planszówkami też. Ta kreska rysowania gier fantazy, taka oldschoolowa, albo książki, nie? Na przykład właśnie Conan Barbarzyńca, takie Jezu. Zajebiste była ta wizja artystyczna. Bardzo ją lubiłem. Ale w sumie dziwne, że to nie wraca. Tu 80'sy, nie? Takie czuć po tym bardzo mocno. No damski pancerz przepiękny, no co tu będziesz gadał. Wiecie, kiedyś gry były lepsze.
cover and half the name, having nothing to do with the actual game. At this point, it would be time consuming and expensive to redo it all, so they end up just sticking with it. And in 1994, the game hits shelves, and people pick it up. Looks nice. The storyline isn't amazing, the quests are pretty linear, the graphics are only okay, and on launch, the game is absolutely fucked. There are random crashes, falling through floors, corrupt save files, invisible enemies, quest
Brzmi jak
items not
Bethesda.
spawning, enemies just walking through
Siema
walls,
Slim.
and more. It's also very hard to run, but install the patches coming out every other week, and eventually, the game works. And it's good. It starts out like any other dungeon crawler at the time, but leave that first dungeon, and you can go anywhere.
Open
For
world.
starters, the game is absolutely massive. Its map spans an entire procedurally generated continent, clocking in at around 9 million square
Amazing.
kilometers. That's over half the size of Russia. There are hundreds of towns, cities, dungeons, and quests to dig through. Although again, these are mostly procedurally generated. There's also a ton of NPCs. All are procedurally named and have their own professions. They'll even run away if your weapon's drawn. Arena also has a pretty detailed character creation system, with various races, 18 classes, and an attribute system. Also, a cool spellcrafting system, a dynamic weather system, and is that a persistent day and night cycle? Pretty rare at the time. At night, shops even close. And just like real life, monsters and other creatures start to appear. And the game goes on to sell around 100,000 copies.
100 tysięcy
Not a
kopii.
massive
To nie
success,
jakoś dużo.
but it's alright.
Diablo sprzedał 1 milion, nie?
And Bethesda hits the green light for a sequel.
Daggerfall. Ja
It's
pierdolę,
now
jak
the
ja go kocham.
mid-90s. There are about 40 people at Bethesda.
Nie, jak ja
and Todd
widzę
has handed
Daggerfalla,
his
to mi
first
się tak po
major
prostu
job.
odpala.
Producer and designer on their next Terminator game, Future Shock.
Najlepszy Elder
With a team of
Scrolls, jaki
about
wyszedł.
8 people. This is one of the first first-person shooters to feature true 3D environments, thanks to their cutting-edge in-house game engine, X-Engine. It's also one of the first PC games with full 3D mouse look, meaning you can now look up and
Ej,
down.
dobrze to wygląda.
Despite all of that, it doesn't sell too well. But at the same time, development on Arena's sequel is now well underway, and Daggerfall is shaping up to be one of the largest and most ambitious RPGs ever made. They now had a bigger dev team, around 15 people. However,
15
development is still not fun. 7-hour workdays, 18 months of crunch, some weeks, 60 hours on the clock minimum, or managers would be screaming. Things are so bad. The Terminator game devs are pulled in to help out. They have limited technology to work with and a far tighter deadline. And again, there are new ideas and features constantly bloating the scope of the game, with a ton of these eventually having to be cut. in-depth housing furnishing, warring factions, cities under siege, advanced AI, and even multiplayer, all nixed. Naturally, the team is fairly stressed. A decent chunk of staff dip from the company, and one is even hospitalized for a breakdown.
Co ty
Development
gadasz?
of this game is such a nightmare, it's almost an
Takie
end of
crunch już
Bethesda's
były
software.
wtedy w
But
Bethesdzie.
in 1996, after almost 3 years of development, Daggerfall comes out the other side, and it's very good. It also sells very well, shifting over
sprzedał
100,000 copies
100 000
in just a few
tylko?
days,
Kilka
and
dni.
eventually settling at almost 1 million. Again,
Milion,
the game
nice.
is huge. This time it's set in a
Daggerfall
smaller,
jest
but more
fenomenalnym
fleshed out
RPG-iem.
segment of the continent. This time with around 15,000 towns and cities, and almost 1 million NPCs, who are now also racist. The map is now about 200,000 square kilometers, almost the size of the UK, and this time it's fully consistent, meaning you can actually walk from town to town. One guy on Reddit says walking the map corner to corner took him around 69 hours. Nice. It's also on Bethesda's new X engine, so enjoy all of that in true 3D. And Daggerfall is packed with new features. Lock bashing, climbing, house and ship purchases, a detailed banking system with letters of credit and loans, horseback travel, an actual legal system with court sessions, and holidays with actual effects on the in-game world. Daggerfall is also
Zima,
a far more
była.
in-depth
Siema,
RPG.
Smajerowski.
There are massive upgrades to the character system. It now features
Jak wróciłem teraz z dzisiejszą wiedzą do Daggerfalla, nie wiem, my go rok temu, 2 lata temu ogrywaliśmy, to pierwszy odcinek z Daggerfalla to jest 1,5 godziny robienia postaci. To był tak złożony RPG.
35 skill lines, including parkour, speechcraft, and the ability to learn enemy languages. Also, instead of leveling up and manually choosing which skills to improve, skills go up by just doing the skill. There are also now joinable factions, like the Fighters, Thieves, and Mages Guild, an upgraded dialogue system, and a whole reputation system to boot, with factions, cities, provinces, lower classes, and upper classes, all having their own opinion of you.
I randomowość
Your
generowania
alignment with
dungeonu.
factions even changes the end of the game. Naturally, Daggerfall ends up being an absolutely huge install, around 400 megabytes. Bear in mind though, this is at a time where most games clock in at around 10 megabytes, and hard drives only really go up to about 1 gigabyte. Again, it's also
Cały
very
dysk na
hard to
jedną grę.
and the game has horrific technical issues. This is actually much worse than Arenas, so Bethesda gets back on the patch mill, but even still, the game remains very buggy to this day. In December 1997,
Jak nie graliście
they
w Daggerfalla, to generalnie polecam sobie pobrać wersję na Unity. Ona jest darmowa na necie, no nie? I jest fenomenalnie dobry. I jest przystosowany do bardzo takiego nowoczesnego standardu. Normalnie sterujesz wsadem, obracasz się myszką, nie ma tego oldschoolowego obracania się. Świetny jest Daggerfall. To jest gra, która naprawdę w dzisiejszych czasach przeżywa ten egzamin czasu.
release a linear dungeon crawler called Elder Scrolls Battlespire. It does
O
terribly.
ja pierdolę, grałem w Battlespire, namówił mnie jakiś widz na to po Daggerfallu. Battlespire to jest takie jebane gówno, to jest ogrywalne, no nie? Oni pierwszy wydali fenomenalnego Daggerfalla, potem wydali tego Battlespire'a. To bez kitu, to masz ochotę, kurwa, na lobotomię po graniu tego Battlespire'a. To jest jebana tragedia. Battlespire to jest jedna z najgorszych gier, którą zagracie kiedykolwiek w życiu. Polecam sprawdzić. Odpalasz? Chuj wie, o co chodzi w tym. Jest tak do dupy.
In October 1998, they release Elder Scrolls Redguard. This is a 3D action-adventure game inspired
beka
by
była.
Tomb Raider. It also does terribly. In fact, these games do so badly, the company's now in financial ruin because of
Jezu,
them.
pomyślcie,
And
że
they're
wtedy
now
mogła
downsizing
Bethesda upaść.
massively.
Yes, I was in the chess club.
During this time, a ton of devs hit the road, including Julian LaFay and most of the original team. Things are bad.
Prawie.
So in an attempt to get their hands on some more cash,
Wyobraźcie sobie, że jakby wtedy Bethesda upadła, może byśmy nie mieli jeszcze MTX-ów w grach? Może tą skórę dla konia by wymyślił ktoś kilka lat później? I dopiero byśmy byli
Bethesda
teraz na etapie akceptacji tego, że gry mają
building
MTX-y?
structures. And in 1999, Chris Weaver brings in a guy called Robert Altman to co-found Zenimax Media, Bethesda Softworks' new parent company. Now Altman is a well-connected lawyer, and with him now in the picture, Bethesda can get some serious investment. So Weaver steps down from CEO to CTO, and Altman steps up. Robert Altman has a completely clean history with no scandals at all. A couple years later, and in 2001, the publishing and development arms of Bethesda split. The publishing arm staying as Bethesda Softworks, and the development team becoming Bethesda Game Studios. They all remain in the same building. However, there's a situation brewing. The dot-com bubble has just burst, and trillions of dollars are currently being vaporized from the stock market. Bethesda is hit hard, and now even more developers are leaving or getting the sack. On the board of directors, serious bad vibes. They're currently doubting the whole enterprise, and there's growing tensions between Weaver and other executives, but particularly Robert Altman. Weaver is focused on the technology and innovation in the games, Altman on the finances and profits of the company, and these clash. And eventually, it comes to a head. And Altman usurps the throne.
You know how much I sacrificed?
He kicks Weaver out of his own company entirely in 2002
Co ty gadasz?
and stacks the board with his own guys. This results in a nasty lawsuit. It's around the same time that the few developers left at Bethesda are putting their heads together for what they think could be their last game.
Morrowind. No i
When work
Morrowind
on
rozbija
Morrowind
bank,
began,
nie?
things didn't look great. After a big wave of layoffs, there are about 30 people left at the company. This includes a development team of just 7 people. As the director of the Elder Scrolls Redguard, as well as one of the few developers actually left, Todd is now the project lead. And in late 2001, he calls in the boys. Listen lads, this could well be the very last thing we're ever gonna make. If we don't nail this, we're cooked. See, Morrowind originally started out much grander in scope, but they'd made that mistake twice before, and development wasn't a great time. This time, they could not miss. So Todd's deciding to dial it back a bit, and attempt a more focused development. The procedural stuff, that's getting flushed. This thing was going to be fully handcrafted from the ground up.
To była dobra wizja,
that
co
3D
jak
engine
co.
of theirs, in the bin too. They're now using an engine called Gamebryo, and naturally, this new engine changes the game a lot. They're now able to create a far more detailed world, enhanced graphics, physics, and lighting. Also, more complex scripting and AI.
Talk to me. Who's there? Who's there? If you talk to someone while invisible, they react to that. Todd, you've done it again.
Despite all of this, development is still horrific, with 7-day work weeks at points. But after a small delay to May 2002, after 5 years, the next Elder Scrolls is ready to release. Morrowind is a completely new Elder Scrolls experience. Instead of the procedural towns, cities, and quests, players step foot into a rich, handcrafted world, just bursting with detail.
He's out of control, this bots.
Not just the world. Pretty much every NPC, including random bandits, are handcrafted too, with their own custom names, stats, and often backstories or notes. Its
To był
storyline
ogromny
is
skok w
very
tamtych
well
czasach,
written.
nie?
It spans politics,
Szczególnie jeszcze
philosophy,
przy
and
wielkości
religion. And it's
Morrowinda.
all layered and
To
ambiguous.
ją gotik
Every
mały.
quest in the game, also handcrafted, and includes a ton of player choice throughout, with branching, interconnected quest lines that are approachable in different ways. It's immersive too. You can kill every single NPC in the game, even if it ruins your main quest.
What have I done?
There's basically no fast travel beyond paid transportation services from city to city, and there's no quest markers, or even a compass. If you want to finish a quest or track somewhere or someone down, you'll have to ask the locals. The world itself, unique indeed. Interesting architecture, outlandish creatures, and big mushrooms. And due to the new
Ja na
engine,
przykład nie lubię, nie? Settingu Morrowinda. On jest taki zbyt szary, zbyt beżowy. Kurde, no niestety. Ja o wiele bardziej wolę Oblivion. On jest fajny, zielony, masz stare pola, łąki, zamki, ruiny takie. Te grzyby, nie jestem fanem, nie?
it's alive.
Nie lubię też w ogóle
with
architektury
items
tamtego
all over the
regionu.
map that you can pick up and drop. Also, this time round, they'd gone with a guy called Jeremy Soule for the soundtrack. And new music, good. NPCs get an upgrade. There's now some light voice acting, and the game introduces a disposition system, meaning every NPC either likes you or hates you depending on your personality, speechcraft, general reputation, and race.
Okay, you're good to go.
Morrowind also introduces leveled zones. See, a ton of enemies in the last 2 games scaled to the player's level. You leveled up a bunch and improved your skills? Well, unlucky. So has everyone else. But here, certain areas will have higher level enemies and loot, meaning exploration is more dangerous, but more rewarding as you get better. On PC, Morrowind also ships with the Elder Scrolls construction set. Essentially, the original dev tools Bethesda had used to actually make
Co ty
the
gadasz?
game.
Nie wiedziałem nawet
Every
tego.
aspect of the game, from landscapes to graphics to quests,
Co ty gadasz?
anything you could hope for, are now open to modification. It's not all good though. The combat in Morrowind is incredibly clunky. and
Jezu, ten kombat jeszcze stoi na systemie trafień z papierowego RPGa, nie? I rzutu
works on
kostką.
dice rolls. Just very clearly hit that guy at point blank range? No, turns out you missed. Also, bad balancing, and there are a few things missing from Daggerfall. The lock bashing, climbing, housing in ships, banking system,
No,
force
był
travel,
dużym kurwa
in-game
downgrade'em
holidays,
względem
legal system,
Daggerfalla.
all gone. And of course, again, the game is buggy, suffers from bad performance, and is hard to run. But overall, Morrowind is an amazing game, and it flies off shelves. It's revolutionary, a way bigger success than they'd ever anticipated. It sells over 4 million copies in the first 3 years. Critical acclaim, coming in from all directions. It's even crowned the Game of the Year. Bethesda also shipped it on the original Xbox
I
for the
wszystko
first time.
dzięki
This is at a
Todzikowi,
time
nie?
where RPGs are more PC focused, so it's now reaching a whole new market, and it goes on to be the 18th
To prawda, RPG zawsze były bardziej, nie? Przypisane do PC-ów. Mhm. O wiele mniej było RPG-ów. Znaczy, no były JRPG, nie? Bardziej na konsolach. Ale no, to prawda. Jak jesteś PC-towy, to jest raczej większa szansa, że jesteś RPG-owy niż cokolwiek inne, nie?
selling game on that console. Morrowind conjures a massive profit, and Bethesda finally has some financial breathing room.
Oblivion.
After Morrowind, Todd is hailed as a king, Bethesda's savior. Under his direction, he'd brought the company back from the brink, so naturally, he's back in the cockpit for their next project. Bethesda also doubles
tak,
up
tak,
their
Borysa.
workforce with some of that new cash. They've also just gone in on new technology. For the first time, they're playing around with the Havoc physics engine, alongside a new world rendering system.
Havok, to były czasy, pamiętacie? Havok jest chyba w DS-ach 1 nawet użyty tak naprawdę. To była bardzo nowatorska technologia. Jak jakaś gra miała Havoka, to każdy o tym wiedział, że ona ma Havoka.
They're also bulking up on the voice acting. In Morrowind, only a few key characters were voiced. But here, Todd wants everyone. And the script for the game ends up at around 40,000 lines of dialogue. That's about 50 hours of audio. An issue. This ends up taking over half the game's file size, so they end up having to trim thousands of voice lines and a ton of already developed game features, just so it'd fit on the 360 disc. Like the first game, arenas were supposed to be in every city in the game, and it was all pretty much done here, but again, it had to go. May 2005. It's E3, and promises are hefty. Todd jumps on the mic himself and fills us in on his new Radiant AI system.
Let's take a look at the other side of the game, our new Radiant AI system. It allows NPCs to have full 24/7 schedules. These NPCs are not scripted.
In the demo, he even shows
Oh.
off a bit of his own voice.
To jest Todd.
What? That really pisses me off.
Oh no! What do we do? I'm so scared!
Anyway,
Piękny
4
głos
years in the
anioła.
oven, and on the 20th of March 2006, Elder Scrolls Oblivion is finally ready. And again, it's good. The combat is far better. For starters, you can now actually hit things. And when you do, the new Havoc physics engine makes for incredibly realistic, true-to-life ragdoll. Also, if you can see something,
Ja na przykład i w Morrowindzie, i w Oblivion najbardziej nie lubię downgrade'u z dungeonów. Daggerfall miał tak zajebiste dungeony, był faktycznym dungeon crawlerem, nie? A te gry to zdowngrade'owały. Ale niestety przechodzenie Obliviona dzisiaj to jest takie schematyczne gówno z tymi portalami. Te portale to jest tragiczny system prowadzenia fabuły. Ja ich tak nie lubię, one są tak nudne niestety. Nie polecam, nie? Wracać do Obliviona i go przejść. Pograć sobie sandboxowo, tak polevelować, postać, poeksplorować zajebiście. Kończyć gówno niefabularną masakra.
chances are you can now pick it up and swing it round. The graphics are also much better. Just don't look at the NPCs. The new rendering system allows for huge load distances, meaning none of that thick fog that was literally everywhere in Morrowind. And the world is populated with luscious, thick shrubbery, thanks to a new technology called Speed Tree.
Bardzo ładnie to wygląda, no, w Oblivionie.
Again, enjoy all of this with another amazing soundtrack from Jeremy Soule. While the main quest is incredibly repetitive,
No, ważne
the side
wspomniał o tym.
quests and faction quest lines in Oblivion, sublime. They're really well written and very fun. In fact, they're generally considered to be the best in the series. The Dark Brotherhood questline is especially popular. And of course, all NPCs are now voiced.
Not bad.
Good to hear. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
There's even some celebrities in here. However, this doesn't come without issues. There are over 1,000 NPCs in the game, and there are only around 10 voice actors between them. Naturally, you'll be hearing some of those voices a lot. One guy alone voices every single guard in the game, and a ton of other characters.
Co ty gadasz?
Stop right there, criminal scum! Stop! You violated the law. I'm a guard, and I love my job. If you run into trouble, come find me.
Players also notice some of the voice acting isn't amazing. Turns out, when recording the voice lines, Bethesda had opted not to go in order of conversations, characters, or even just chronologically, but to go through every voice actor's line alphabetically, meaning voice
Pierdolę.
actors had pretty much no idea what the actual context of their lines were. Brilliant. Actors also just switch voices randomly halfway through dialogue.
I could be banished for telling you.
Okay, I'll show you.
And legitimate
Like, yes.
voice acting mistakes are just left in the game.
All on the same night. Wait a minute, let me do that one again. I heard the thieves broke.
Fans had
Co
also
ty gadasz,
noticed
że tam są nawet takie cięcia, ale widzę do tej
something new. A lot of features from the older games were missing. What happened? Well, back during development, and Todd had looked at Morrowind. We made a great RPG here, boys. A ton of freedom. How can we remove and streamline as much of it as possible? And they got to work.
No.
Morrowind's nuanced storyline with conflicting goals and intersecting quest lines between factions. Cool, but confusing. Too much choice. Make it far simpler and completely linear. Also, let's remove any skill requirements for advancing in factions. So now literally anyone can become the head of any faction. You're playing a bare-knuckle barbarian who's never used a spell in his life? Excellent choice for the head of the Mages Guild. It was pretty cool how we let the player kill anyone in Morrowind, but too much room for error. Remove that feature, and make a ton of NPCs invincible. Morrowind's quests were pretty good, but there's way too much thinking involved.
Ale to Morrowind miał mieć ten cały system związany z karmą i kradnięciem skumy, no nie? Którego potem faktycznie usunęli, bo NPC stawały się uzależnione i mordowały całe miasta.
Let's slap a compass
No,
on the
Oblivion,
bottom of the
Oblivion.
screen with a constant quest marker on top, so players can mindlessly follow it around for the entire game, with no option to turn it off. Scaled leveling. Let's bring it back.
It's rewind time.
Let's also bring back generic, procedural enemy spawns. And let's implement them so badly, all enemy spawns eventually become huge damage sponges that can take you out in a few hits unless you level efficiently. It's apparently actually easier to complete the game at level 1 than any other level because the enemies get so OP.
Wow, 2 hits and you're down. It is evolving, just backwards.
Also, is that petty bandit donning Daedric armor and weapons? In Morrowind, the main way of fast traveling is paying for public transport that takes you from city to city.
dopiero.
But for Oblivion, let's just add free fast travel from anywhere on the map. So you can go anywhere you've discovered.
Ty, tu mocno widać jak już był downgrade'owany przy Oblivionie, nie?
Dumb down
RPG.
spellcrafting and remove spears, throwing weapons, medium armor, ton of spell.
Był skomplikowany Daggerfall, no nie skomplikowany, złożony, bo to jest różnica. Przyszedł Todd, zrobił uproszczonego Morrowinda, uratował firmę, wziął Obliviona, uprościł go jeszcze bardziej i jeszcze bardziej. No i w jakim miejscu jesteśmy teraz? Jesteśmy w miejscu, gdzie pewnie prostacki Skyrim zostanie uproszczony w Elder Scrollsie 6, nie? RPGowy element jest coraz bardziej wyrzucany z RPGa. To jest masakra.
Perfect. And by this point, players are noticing a common theme here with Bethesda games. They had a certain charm to them, and Oblivion was no different. Despite Bethesda releasing a number of patches, a ton of bugs are still present, so modders just end up creating their own patch for the game, fixing bugs that Bethesda never did. The jank was expected, but players had noticed something new.
Z Bethesdą to już jest na takim etapie, że chcesz, żeby oni już nie wypuszczali patchy, bo one niszczą mody, a i tak wszystko naprawiają moderzy, nie? Że jak Bethesda wypuszcza jakiś patch, to jest gorzej niż przed patchem.
There were some inconsistencies between what Todd had promised
These NPCs are not scripted.
and what players had actually purchased. See, at E3, Todd had made some pretty big claims about their new Radiant AI. This new AI would include full schedules for every single NPC in the game and incredibly complex AI scripting, true NPC intelligence. Guards now patrol the cities and react to in-game events and your reputation. Regular NPCs even follow daily routines and eat, sleep, farm, work, and socialize at specific times and in specific areas that now also have conversations not just with the player, but with each other. Todd and the team had even spent time and a ton of money having conversations in real life and spent hours modelling them for in-game adaptation. They come out incredibly lifelike.
A vampire hunter named Raymil Draelus made his way into town, snuck into his house and killed him.
Good day.
Good to see you. I don't know you and I don't care to know you. I don't know you and
Let's
I
hear
don't
it.
care to know you.
Did you?
I don't know you and I don't care to know
What's
you.
this about?
I don't know you and I don't care.
But turns out, on release, the NPCs weren't quite as intelligent as Todd had let on.
Nilos, hello.
That NPC said the other NPC's name. That never happens.
So she's picked up a bow over here.
Wait, what?
She's decided she needs ammo, so she equips the quiver.
NPCs never
And she
did
can
that.
practice her skills. So she's going to drink this potion. It's going to increase her marksman skill.
Dude, that's crazy cool. That was never in Oblivion. None of this made it into the game. The AI was so dumb.
Bethesda would go on to claim that AI was too smart and had to be dumbed down.
Snow. We need more snow. Can't have enough snow.
Indeed.
Then, post-launch, Bethesda crank out a few expansions, like they did with Morrowind. They're highly rated. However, this time round, they're also selling small, downloadable item packs on the store.
No i się zaczyna.
And the first of these, a $2.50 piece of horse armor. Bethesda had just released one of the industry's first microtransactions. Naturally, people aren't too happy.
How much horse armor did you sell?
People will buy anything.
But regardless,
Ty nie znał tego wywiadu. Nie no, Todd to jest jeden z największych... Mówcie o nim co chcecie, ale to jest jeden z największych wizjonerów w branży.
Despite the complaints here and there, Todd's
I
direction
pomylił się.
works again. The game goes mainstream and does very well, selling over 2 million copies within the first few weeks, and becoming one of the fastest selling 360 titles at the time. Also, Game of the Year again. Nice one, boys.
Fallout 3.
Oblivion had taken 4 years and a ton
Ale
of
było
cash.
krytyki
So
względem tego
Zenimax says,
Fallouta
hey,
3.
we should probably get something else going here. and Todd and the boys make a list. They go through various genres, but eventually, one rises to the top: nuclear post-apocalypse. What Todd really wants to do is a Fallout, but getting the rights to that IP, highly unlikely. So they work on concepts for a new IP they were calling Apocalypse Road. However, at Interplay, Fallout's current rights holders and finances aren't looking great. It's so bad that even been in talks to sell the series back to its original creators. Well, turns out someone at Bethesda knows someone at Interplay, and they'd managed to sneak in a bit themselves. And Todd and the boys managed to snag the whole franchise for around $6 million.
Ja pierdolę.
Not bad.
Czajcie, jakie to były czasy? Kupić Fallouta za $6 milionów. Okej, to są pieniądze przed inflacją, nie? Ale nadal, jaka to jest perspektywa, ile Fallout jest dzisiaj warty, no nie? Ja pierdolę. $6 milionów za całego Fallouta. To my byśmy na streamie zrzutek robili na niego.
And with a dev team now of around 75 people, they get to work. This time round, Todd has a bit of a task ahead of him. They're working with the same Gamebryo engine from Oblivion, meaning they now have to turn the bones of a hack-and-slash fantasy game into a dense, urban, post-apocalyptic shooter. They're building gun combat from scratch here, and on one of the jankiest engines out there. But after a few years, things start to come together, and the game's in the final stretch. So as is now customary, at E3 2007, Todd spawns on stage and runs us through the game.
We're ecstatic to show publicly for the first time here today Fallout 3
Fallout w ogóle
demos
wyszedł na
live.
Games for Windows, nie? Które umarło
Here we have an
całkowicie.
iBot broadcasting the word of the US government.
I will fight to protect you. I am your president of law and order. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets.
And on the 28th of October 2008, Fallout 3 comes out. Now, the first two Fallouts, generally considered two of the best RPGs ever made.
No.
So the bar for Fallout 3, pretty high. But Bethesda delivers on a few points. First off, they'd nailed the look and tone. Fallout 3 carries the aesthetics of the first two games into 3D well.
It was perfect.
Bleak and gritty, retro-futuristic, a dash of dark humour, and then that 2000s piss filter slapped on top. Chef's kiss. The soundtrack, this time by new composer Inonzer, a smash hit again. And if you're not a fan, just hit the new in-game radio and roam the post-apocalyptic wasteland, absolutely annihilating people to pleasant 40s jazz. The map has amazing environmental storytelling.
You'll find skeletons at the vault door, remains of people pleading and begging to be let in and saved from this approaching doom.
And some pretty interesting locations, like a vault filled with endless
To
clones
było
of a man
super,
named
no.
Gary.
Dużo było takich lokacji dziwnych w Falloutie.
And the Republic of Dave.
I am Dave, President of the Republic of Dave. You will address me as Mr. President, or I will have you executed.
There's also slavery,
Mister, can you get us out of here?
I to z dziećmi.
Thanks for nothing, ass.
ghoul racism,
You know anything about the tower?
O, ten Penny Tower.
really? You goddamn bigot.
genocide,
To jest wyrzucenie
and
bomby.
political undertones. The gameplay, not amazing.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Janky, floaty movement, combined with awkward gunplay,
Bardzo
can
dużo
make for some
było
horrific
krytycznych
shootouts.
komentarzy
So
względem tego
Bethesda
Fallouta.
adapts the VAT system from the first two games.
Ja pamiętam, jak ten Fallout został zapowiedziany i ja wtedy za dzieciaka myślałem tak, ty, ale przecież Fallout jest grą turową. Jak oni zrobią Fallouta w 3D turowego? Dla mnie to było nie do pomyślenia. I potem się dowiedziałem o VAT-sie. I dowiedziałem się o VAT-sie i pomyślałem tak, o kurwa, ale to jest genialne. Ale ten system to jest świetny pomysł, nie? No i potem zdropił Fallout. No i okazało się, że wszyscy go jebali, że jest mało RPGowy, że to już nie jest RPG.
Meaning you can now pause the game, lock onto specific body parts, and
To
blow
was
people to
genialne.
pieces in cinematic slow motion.
Uwielbiam.
And the people love it. That's the good. Other aspects of Fallout 3, wild misses.
No.
Again, the game reuses a ton of voice actors, resulting in everyone sounding the exact same. One of your companions even has the same exact voice as every raider in the game. The combat AI sucks. They have no concept of cover, so they'll just strafe left and right and beeline straight towards you. And of course, the usual Bethesda jank. Game breaking, quest breaking, file corrupting bugs, crashes, horrific performance on PS3, and the realistic ragdolls return. There's also no field of view slider on PC, even though you can easily change it via console commands. Also, again, the RPG elements. Where are they? Some elements from the originals have come back. Drug addiction, the special system, perks, skills, and speech options. But even then, some of them are gimped. For starters, speech. The dialogue in Elder Scrolls games basically amounted to running up to someone and just shouting boomers at them. But this wouldn't cut it for a Fallout game, which had tons of choice and consequences in dialogue. And in Fallout 3, it's much worse. Fallout's original speech checks are subtle. The game doesn't actually show you speech options you haven't unlocked, and doesn't even tell you when it is a unique option, so you need to actually read and think about what you pick. In Fallout 3, even if your speech isn't high enough, the system works on percentages. So either way, you still have a chance to succeed. Doesn't work the first time, just reload the game till it does.
Ja najbardziej lubię ten RPG, gdzie jak masz niską inteligencję, to gadasz jak ork. W Neverwinterze to jest, nie? To jest super. Nie rozumiesz, co do ciebie mówią, masz kwestie dialogowe, ja iść, ja zabić. Tak ma być.
In 1 and 2, dialogue choices could make a major difference in the way things panned out, and would also often vary based on specific skills, special attributes, or traits. But for 3, Todd just said nah, let's stick with just speech, and a handful of instances with very select perks. Speech options in 3 are also far less consequential. The first 2 Fallout games were very involved, in-depth RPGs with branching storylines, open-ended quests, and a ton of skill checks. Also, a ton of impactful decisions that shaped the world around the player, and contributed to a ton of different endings. But, like for Oblivion, the quests in Fallout 3 very linear. You're on a fixed path for pretty much the whole game, and most quests have one outcome. And that one outcome normally involves this. The first games also
Ja nie wiem, czemu Bethesda do tej pory nie próbowała remasterować starych Falloutów. Fallout 1, Fallout 2 stary, zremasterowany w pełnym 3D z VATS-em na ich silniku z możliwością modowania, co ty bank rozbiło. No nie? Fallout 3 zremasterowany do nowoczesnej grafiki z modami też mi się wydaje, żeby rozbił bank. I jeszcze w ogóle tego Fallouta 1 i 2 można byłoby tak zremasterować, że miałbyś 2 różne typy widoku. Miałbyś go w pełnym 3D z VATS-em albo w 2D izometrycznego, nie? Jezu, to bank rozbiło. Tylko niech właśnie ktoś inny to zrobi, nie Bethesda.
Here, 1/3 of the characters are now unkillable. Before, you'd work to piece together breadcrumbs of information from NPCs, work out where to go and what to do, and the world and quests would open up organically from there. But in Fallout 3, again, they slap a quest marker on your screen, and you end up just following that for the rest of the game. The game is also very easy. In 1 and 2, resources were scarce, and you had to plan accordingly. But not here. There are weapons and armor laying about everywhere, and it's not long before you're absolutely loaded with caps and ammo, and constantly over-encumbered. Bethesda adds enemy scaling again, meaning everyone on the map is roughly the same level as you. Both Fallout 1 and 2, and Oblivion and Morrowind, had joinable factions, but for Fallout 3, nah, leave it out. Can't join them, and there's not even a reputation system for them. Instead, they'd just added the karma system from Fallout 2, and this is a bit flawed. Did you just steal a shoe?
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Just hanging around.
Just hanging around.
Well, the whole town is now coming to murder you. As a result of all of this, Fallout is essentially no longer an RPG. It's an action RPG with bad action.
No.
Also, by this point...
Chyba najgorszy element Fallouta 3, co byście powiedzieli? Mi się wydaje, że w tym wszystkim jest jeszcze jedna gorsza rzecz, którą nie wymienił. Gunplay. No ja kocham Fallouta, no to jest dla mnie strasznie nostalgiczny tytuł. Uwielbiam Fallouta 3, pomimo jego wszystkich wad, tego uwielbiam. Ale gunplay w Falloutie to jest takie gówno. To jest stary gunplay na poziomie Wolfensteina, no nie? To dosłownie się nie da.
Key writers and designers dating back to Morrowind had begun to leave the company. Not good. So Todd sniffs around for replacements, and eventually he lands on a bloke called Emil Paliarulo. The guy who
O
wrote
Jezu,
Oblivion.
kurwa, tylko nie on! O chłopie, tylko nie on.
Questline. He's now head writer and designer. Sweet. The Dark Brotherhood questline was really good, so that's a good choice. One problem. This guy's actually not great, and now he's no longer working on individual quests, more like the whole overarching story, character arcs, themes, choices, and consequences for the entire game. As a result, Fallout 3's story and quest design, very underwhelming. The entire main quest consists of just following the trail of your dad out in the wasteland, and then being bossed around by other people. It's completely linear, with only a couple of choices determined by a single press of a button right at the end. There aren't no choices in the game. See, Emil actually has a very big overarching question. Do you want to be extremely good or cartoonishly bad? Because those are your only choices. In 1 and 2, choices are generally nuanced. There are pros and cons to each option. But here, no.
Zero-jedynkowy, no.
Here, you can absolutely annihilate this entire town with a nuke for basically
A to jest
no
super.
reason, or not do that. A very real moral dilemma. The characters
Poczekaj,
are
to jest
bland,
dylemat dla
and the
kogoś?
writing is generally pretty terrible.
Ghouls living here? You're serious?
This is some dialogue from what's supposed to be the dramatic climax of the game.
Do whatever you want. There's no need for more violence.
Then you will immediately hand over
What is he
all
doing
materials related to this project.
Run. Run.
A lubię ten dźwięk wykrywania
Also,
radioaktywności.
end up nuking that whole town, killing everyone there for absolutely no reason. This is your dad's response.
I have a
Zajebiste.
hard time believing you. I raised you to be better than that. Better than the
A
waste.
to jakaś zmodowana
We'll
wersja.
talk more about this later.
At the end of the game, the story is supposed to culminate in the player sacrificing themselves in a
Nie
chamber
no,
of rage.
zakończenie Fallouta 3. Niego grasz. Nagle on się kończy w 2 godziny, tak jakoś randomowo. On w ogóle nie ma takiego zebrania do tego late'a, nie? Gothic, tak czujesz tego Gotika na przykład, że go kończysz. A w tym Falloutie, stary, nie, to się to prawda, to się
Radiation
randomowo
to
kończy,
save the
no.
wasteland. Hold on. I have a radiation-resistant super mutant right next to me. He can go in, save everyone, and then no one has to die.
I'm sorry. My companion, but, no.
People complain, and writers eventually give in, spitefully adding this ending in with a paid DLC.
And so it was that the lone wanderer ventured forth from Vault 101. But the child refused to follow the father's selfless example.
The DLC
Nie,
also
nie wiedziałem,
revives
że
the
to dodali
player,
w DLC.
making the whole point of the end of the game redundant. Also, fun fact about this DLC.
O,
The intro features
znacie to? Są latające NPC z hełmem pociągu.
a moving train sequence. But because the Gamebryo engine is so crusty, encoding in a moving train would have taken a while. The train is actually a piece of armor the player equips right before the cutscene. Anyway, the original Fallout games had a ton of different endings based on your actions. Here, Todd Howard had claimed an insane 200 endings for the game.
Everything.
O, 200 różnych zakończeń. 200 to tam jest chyba plansz w PowerPoincie, nie?
Gets a bit big, so as of last week, we're over 200 endings. That is not an exaggeration.
Oni to tak samo liczą, jak kiedyś liczyli outcome buildów w Diablo 3. Masz 10 różnych plansz, na każdej planszy masz 3 różne możliwości i potem mieszasz ile z wszystkich możliwości razem wziętych. I wychodzi, że jest 200 zakończeń gry. Z 200 różnych kombinacji. W Diablo 3 kiedyś Blizzard opublikował taki artykuł, że w Diablo 3 jest, nie wiem, tam 8 milionów różnych buildów. Bo wzięli każdego skilla z każdą runą w każdej innej kolejności. I nie wiem, czy tam było 8 milionów, czy miliardów nawet. Tam jakieś takie absurdalne liczby już powychodziły, no nie? I tyle było buildów.
Fallout 3 had 2 endings. Regardless, the game does amazingly. First week sales of around $5 million. $300 million generated instantly.
You've got mail.
And despite the consistent dumbing down and streamlining of their games, Todd does it again. It wins Best RPG at the Game Awards, and a ton of Game of the Year awards at other places. Todd Howard is now 3 for 3.
Skyrim.
The year is now 2010. Bethesda Game Studios is a team of around 100 people, and they're riding high. Both Oblivion and Fallout 3, big wins. Todd had found himself a golden formula here, and he wasn't changing it anytime soon. Now, it had been about 4 years since Oblivion, so the hype for the next Elder Scrolls, quite high. E3 2010. Todd emerges on stage through a sea of vape mist. He weaves between a group of bald men in robes, while epic chanting music plays. This Todd seems different. He's sporting a slick brown leather jacket.
I love leather.
On his face, a sly smirk. Gone was the quiet confidence. Now, he's glowing. Anyway, Elder Scrolls V is about to be revealed. Wow. And they go on a marketing frenzy.
Whatever you say, Mr. Billboard.
A ton of television ads, expensive live trailers, and stuff like this. In promotional material, Todd is getting increasingly unhinged.
When you walk into town, we can have it look for someone with a child. We can have that child kidnapped and put in a dungeon nearby.
Forget the dungeon, children. The game looks fantastic, and it's
Czekaj, co on gadał?
Material, Todd is getting increasingly unhinged.
When you walk into town, we can have it look for someone with a child. We can have that child kidnapped and put in a dungeon nearby.
Co on gada? Naprawdę w materiałach reklamowych do Skyrima w wywiadzie Todd mówił, że może znaleźć w mieście kogoś z dzieckiem, porwać to dziecko i zostawić w dungeonie? No jak go nie nazywać wizjonerem?
Forget the dungeon, children. The game looks fantastic, and it's launching soon. People are very hyped. And on the 11th of the 11th, 2011, it's go time. For starters, the art direction here, incredible. Enemies, armor, weapons, and the huge snowy vistas in this game all look fantastic. And as is expected at
W ogóle
this point,
memy wszystkie
Jeremy
z Skyrimem.
soundtrack, perfection. They even wrote a whole language for the game, and the main theme is written in both that and English, with identical meanings and rhymes in both. Factions are back, and this time you can actually join them again. There's also a massive civil war going on, and you can only pick one side. Choice. And there's genuinely compelling arguments on both sides. Nuance. What was going on? However, this is just a side quest, and as a result, not a massive amount of time and effort went into it. It's generally considered a bit rushed and lacking in depth. Also, first on Todd's agenda with this game.
Dobra, najlepszy quest w Skyrimie. Dawajcie, let's go. Łabajack. Totalnie Łabajack deklasuje wszystkie inne questy. A co waszym zdaniem? Dawajcie komentarze. Nie, Łabajack najlepszy. Gildia Złodziei? Dom Wiedźmy? More Like Baal? A może Delcek? Linia Wampirów? Może Mroczne Bractwo? Nie, ja wybieram Łabajacka. Najbardziej mi utkwił w pamięci.
At this point, Gamebryo had gotten a bit of a subpar reputation. Quite outdated, with notable jank. Okay, let's actually bring this thing into the 21st century, boys. And they'd gotten to work on building and improving it. They slapped the name The Creation Engine on, and hoped for a clean slate. Despite the upgrades and rebranding, this wasn't fooling anyone. The engine is still crusty, and as a result of its limitations, this is what a massive, countrywide civil war looks like in Skyrim. Also, the jank in ragdolls, still incredible. The map, not massive, but very dense, and a lot of fun to explore. The graphics, not as groundbreaking as Oblivion, but pretty decent. This time, the new engine allows dynamic lighting and shadows, better physics in ragdolls, and an improved animation system. And NPCs no longer look like melted cheese. Gameplay-wise, enemy scaling is still here, but much better. This time, it has minimum and maximum levels depending on location, so nothing is too hard or too easy. Better combat with smoother animations, cinematic kill moves, and improved magic casting.
Najlepsze były te cinematiki w Skyrimie, gdzie strzelałeś w przeciwnika, strzała leciała gdzieś dalej i oglądałeś 10 sekund, jak leci strzała i trafia w owce.
Dual wielding, dragons, pretty cool. And that awkward dialogue zoom from Oblivion, finally gone.
One of the things you've solved is the old crap zoom into characters' faces when they start talking to you.
Solved as in took it out. Yeah, solved.
Some elements of the AI are also improved. The NPC's line of sight now comes directly out of their eyeballs.
O, to było zajebiste.
This also
Z
means you
koszami.
can now pick up a bucket, slap it on someone's head,
I
and
okraść
blind
go.
them completely. Realism. They'll also now search for you if you're using stealth. However, the AI here, not amazing. Just launched a massive fireball and wiped out half a group of bandits from behind a tiny rock. They'll conduct a massive manhunt for you, and then forget about everything in about 15 seconds.
Must have been the wind.
Immersive indeed.
Must have been the wind.
Need something?
I'm going to find whoever did this.
However, in a few cases, Oblivion's AI is actually better. Turns out, this time round, Todd's groundbreaking and immersive Radiant AI had been dialed back a bit, and NPCs in Skyrim now rarely, if ever, actually talk to each other, outside of a few scripted moments.
Skibidi was fine until you rizzed along. Simpire was chill AF.
They also love talking over each other.
I'm always interrupting people.
Also, again, a ton of NPCs here are essential.
Ma'am, please die, grandmother! Oh, she's essential. Are you serious?
Todd's formula for game design was simple. Simplification. What could we cut? Streamline, trim the fat, and make this meat lean. And this didn't change for Skyrim. And the first thing on the chopping block? The character system. Attributes? Don't need them, mate. And in Skyrim, they're completely gone. Instead, players just choose to improve either health, stamina, or magicka
taki
on level
downgrade.
ups. Classes and birth signs? Don't need them either. Skills? We didn't remove enough last time. Acrobatics, athletics, hand-to-hand, and more? In that bin, now. Now let's add a perk system, but no need to get too creative here. If you can't think of something cool, number go up will work just fine. And they were finished. All of this results in no strategy to character creation and leveling, and different characters and playthroughs that feel very samey. The armor. In Oblivion, it's a bit more involved. It was split into helmet, greaves, cuirass, gauntlets, and boots, alongside a clothing and robe layer. However, all of this was far too confusing, so Todd decides to dumb it down. The greaves and cuirass, combine them. The clothing and robe layer can go entirely. Also, armor and weapons in Oblivion would get damaged over time, with the player either having to pay for repairs or repairing them themselves with the armorer's skill. But in Skyrim, no more. They also remove staffs, ability enchantments, NPC dialogue disposition, and the entire spellcrafting system gone without a trace. The writing. Emil Paliarulo is head writer again, and as a result, things are not great.
Teraz dobre rzeczy wypisał online nieraz, nie?
And they're back. A grave existential threat.
By my calculations, we have
Zajebista, nie? Główna linia fabularna, jak w Gothicu 2. Przybyły smoki i są złe.
5 years until the world ends. Fix it now!
But other than right at the start of the game, and then a bit later on at a small tower, the dragons don't really actually bother anyone. In the main questline, 90% of the time you're either clearing a dungeon, fighting a dragon, or searching for a powerful word. Side quests are a massive downgrade. In Oblivion, there are murder mysteries, paintings you can enter, dreams, and so on. Skyrim, not so much. Some good stuff here and there, but they're few and far between. A ton of them basically being fetch this, or f that guy. NPCs in Oblivion acknowledge your actions as you progress. You just helped save town down the road? Fair play, mate. Let me get you a pint. In Skyrim, just saved the planet from world-ending dragons.
I need this all day.
Yeah, alright, mate. No one asked. Also, you're fighting in a massive civil war, and the main difference in outcome is the guards looking slightly different.
I don't know, they all kind of look the same.
You just slaughtered the whole continent's emperor.
Co to było?
It makes literally no difference at all.
Nobody cares.
Add some boring dialogue, bland characters with no personality.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't.
And Emil called it a day.
I'm done. That's it. I'm out.
Then there's the general issues of the game. In Morrowind and Oblivion, factions are scattered across the map and in different cities. Here, they're isolated to one city each. Quest markers are back again, and are now even more prominent on screen. However, this time you can actually turn them off. Nice. But here's the thing. Due to the game's butchered journaling system, it's almost impossible for you to actually work out what to do or where to go without them, making this option completely pointless. At this point, even Bethesda could no longer ignore the bugs. So for Skyrim, they dedicated a whole team pre-launch to hunting them down. It worked perfectly.
No i chyba to jest ten Skyrim, którego kochamy.
Skyrim came out in late 2011. This is also around the time YouTube begins to explode.
Właśnie, memy, nie?
And now bug compilations are popping up, and that famous Bethesda charm is being broadcast worldwide. Some bugs more charming than others. But it's alright. Bethesda kick back and relax, because at this point, they know fans will patch the game for them, and modders churn out the unofficial patch within a few months. And for the third time in a row, some things Todd had claimed about his new game pre-launch, debatable.
I don't deserve this kind of shabby treatment.
See, they'd already perfected Radiant AI, so Todd decided on a new thing to show off, Radiant Quests. And Skyrim would feature an infinite amount of them, he tells us. We'd never run out of things to do, and he's not actually wrong.
Były randomowe generowane questy i coś zabij, wróć.
However, he also mentions Radiant Story.
Right, so we have this new piece of tech called Radiant Story.
This would be a system where these Radiant quests would be dynamically
Ja lubię, jak
generated.
kurwa w game devie wymyślasz jakiś prosty system i nazywasz go nową technologią, nie?
Based on the unique factors of your playthrough, places you've discovered, quests you've completed, and previous interactions. Spend a lot of time with a particular NPC, they'll probably hire you for a hit, or you'll be hired to hit them. Todd tells us this system will also lead to strange random encounters. Just dropped a sword in the middle of a pub? Chances are, two guys are getting into a scrap over it, he tells us.
Questions?
Good at a particular skill? A random man may even come up to you and ask for training for it, or challenge you to a duel.
Training, eh? The real question is, can you fight?
None of this ever happened.
So that was a f***ing lie.
What we get instead is an endless wave of generic, procedurally generated, cookie-cutter quests that spawn basic, nameless NPCs into the game to kill or steal from. Fantastic. Also,
logs and trees and all the way up to distant mountains, and if you've played our previous stuff, you know that mountain is not just a backdrop. You can walk all the way to the top of that mountain.
True, but elusive. Half the mountains in this game have nothing of interest on them.
Well, this sucks.
And there's no actual system to climb them. You'll have to stanky leg your way up a metric ton of ragged rocks, due to them not having actual pathways.
Stanky leg, push. Stanky leg,
Koniem
push.
najlepiej, jeśli chodzi o pionowo
Todd
dosłownie.
definitely mentioned a working economy system.
We have a working economy that you can either do, you can actually
Ja
sabotage this
pierdolę,
windmill
jak
if you want.
zdarzały te wszystkie kłamstwa Todda.
And so am I going to be able to participate in that economy?
Slightly. It's kind of, you know...
Naturally, on launch, people want to see this groundbreaking mechanic in action, so they try to decimate the local economy by attacking the local sawmill. Nothing happens, because this feature never existed in the game in any form. The modding scene for Skyrim, absolutely massive. Immersion mods, quest mods, survival mods, graphics mods, other mods. Todd and the boys see this and start brainstorming.
No way.
And a few years after release, Bethesda unveils their brand new idea, paid mods on the Steam Workshop. They tell us it's to financially compensate modders, but then it comes out that mod creators receive just 25% of the revenue here. Valve get 30%, and then 40% kicked up to the big guy. Also, due to the complete lack of moderation, the majority of mods on here, amazing. A ton are plagiarized from the Nexus, and even from the same Steam Workshop. Naturally, the whole thing is incredibly unpopular, and Bethesda and Valve are forced to backpedal. Despite the consistent dumbing down, removal of features, roleplay regression, terrible writing, relentless jank, and honeyed work.
Ja pierdolę, wy zobaczcie na to wszystko, co miało miejsce w Elder Scrollsach i teraz sobie pomyślcie, jak będą Elder Scrollsy 6 wyglądać. Czy da się jeszcze uprościć Skyrima? No przecież z Falloutem 4 to w sumie to pokazali. Fallout 4 to już w ogóle perki skille wyjebał też do kosza, stary. Jak ja się boję tych Elder Scrollsów 6.
Words from Todd. Again, the game does insanely well. Within 2 days, it sells 3 million copies. A week, 7 million. A month, 10 million. Over $500 million in the bank. And Bethesda Game Studios is now an institution. Skyrim, a cultural icon. To many, now the face of the open world RPG. Todd's 4th major game and his 5th Game of the Year award.
Thank you so much, everybody at Spike TV, everybody who supported this game, the whole team at Bethesda Game Studios. We've poured ourselves into this.
At this point, the man just couldn't miss. God Howard, people even say. Todd is now
Lepiej,
4
żeby
for
też
4.
6 nikt nie
A
powstał,
literal
no.
god. He could do no wrong.
Finalnie myślałem, że trochę będzie mocniejszy ten materiał, a raczej jest bardziej o tym, o downgrade'zie, nie? Jaki miał miejsce w tym Bethesdzie. Dobra.